I hope I have earned a little credibility with you on the economy, on jobs and incomes, and on getting rid of budget deficits and not spending more than you take in. Because I believe that a lot of undecided voters that are still there, or independent voters that aren't sure, they'd have to concede the president's been a good commander-in-chief. He's honored the oath of office. He has fought terrorism vigorously. He has pursued diplomacy vigorously. He has a really good Secretary of State. He has ended the war in Iraq. He is bringing our soldiers home from Afghanistan. Something that's very important to me is he's committed to taking care of the men and women who serve when they do come home, to make sure they have health care and education and access to jobs. And that means a lot to me. The Tea Party House, already buried in one of these omnibus education bills, a provision which makes it harder for veterans who move to take advantage of the GI Bill. Because it said that instead of giving a presumption that the veteran is a resident of the state where the veteran is living, it gave the states the option to deny that the veteran's in charge of out-of-state tuition. It's an unbelievable story about a woman who lived in North Carolina, married a man who was also in the military. They were sent to Texas to train. Then they go overseas, and they both serve in combat zones. Then they come back. They move back to North Carolina, her home, and they deny her in-state tuition, which totally blows away the value of her GI Bill. That affects 250,000 people a day. That's the difference in Barack Obama's philosophy and their philosophy. That never would have happened if the Tea Party hadn't taken over the House of Representatives. So he's been a good commander-in-chief. I believe he's done a good job with a tough hand, but I want to come back to that. I believe he's made good decisions. And I believe he'll make better decisions for the next 4 years. He signed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which is a decision not just for women, but for men who are married to them. Nobody in a family with 2 workers, no man, wants his wife to be paid for doing less for doing the same job a man is. If they got kids in the house, they know it's good for the kids, it's more income, and it's better for the country and for the community. Governor Romney still won't say whether he would have signed it. I mean, how hard is it to say yes or no? It's been on the books 2 years.
Hard for him.
It's hard for him because it might make somebody mad. Well, as George W. Bush once famously said, the president is the decider-in-chief. And the next president will face far harder decisions than saying yes or no to whether you would have signed a bill that's already been on the books 2 years. I like Barack Obama. He's more decisive, and he'll make better decisions. President Obama has fought to maintain funding for Planned Parenthood. Mitt Romney wants to get rid of it. I want Barack Obama to make the next Supreme Court appointments because I think the future of America's women may depend on it. The deal that saved the automobile industry was far from a bailout. Management made concessions, labor made concessions. We had to give Chrysler and General Motors some loans, which they have repaid with interest. And we invested a little stock in the company, but there are 250,000 more people making cars in America. Even more important for every one of you is we would have lost 1 million jobs if GM and Chrysler had gone down. Why? Because without GM buying parts, all the auto parts manufacturers would have gone down. And everybody they support, which is why all the Japanese and German car manufacturers with operations in America wanted to keep General Motors and Chrysler going. Mitt Romney was against it. Now, I believe this is really important. because Obama made the kind of decision I think we have to make. Yes, we'll help, but only if you do something responsible. We're not going to give you a handout. I want to know what you're going to put in labor. I want to know what you're going to put in management. I want to know we're going to modernize the car business, so if we help you get out of this tight, you're not going to be in the dumps again. You're going to be a competitive automobile industry. So it's the right sort of decision. Romney said no, he should have let him go bankrupt and liquidated him. It would have been a terrible mistake. We'd all be in a weaker economy. So it's funny going to Ohio, where 1 in 8 jobs depends on the car business. So Governor Romney's trying to figure out how he can say that's really not what he said. He's trying to do that on a whole bunch of things here as we get toward the end. And from what I heard in the last debate, Maggie Hassan's opponent's trying to do the same thing. It's pretty hard when you say it and it's right there. You need awful thick sunglasses not to be able to see the words. But this is really, really serious. So what did he do? He cooked up a bogus charge. He said President Obama was allowing Jeep, which is owned by Chrysler, which in turn is largely owned by Fiat, the Italian automakers, to move jobs to China. Y'all been following that story? Yeah. This is important. You got to know when your president is talking to you, you can trust what they say. So he says, he reads this article, he says, Obama's letting Jeeps move jobs to China. It's not true. I helped the governor of Ohio open a Jeep plant in Toledo when I was president. And we had to, it's not worth going through the details, we had to do a bunch of stuff to make it possible for them to do it. They just announced they're going to spend $500 million more there. They're going to upgrade the plant. They're going to do some new production lines. And they're also expanding in Michigan. It's nuts. They're expanding in America. What they're doing is reopening a plant that they closed in China because Jeep's way too much for you to produce them in America, send them all the way to China, and be able to afford to sell them at a competitive price. They are hiring more people in America. So Jeep says that. Chrysler says that. Even General Motors got so upset that they said it wasn't true. So what did Governor Romney do? He then said the president was working with the Italians to move more jobs to China. It sounded like Obama woke up every morning thinking about how to get jobs out of America, and when he couldn't get enough help from Americans, he had this international conspiracy to get the Italians involved. I was with Terry McAuliffe the other day, and we thought, boy, next thing you know, we'll be coming after the Irish, and we're toast. We're laughing, but this is pathetic. This is beneath a president. You can make an argument with having to make up something. So then what did they do? Having been rebuked by Jeep, by Chrysler, by General Motors, they put an ad on making the claim. Having been rebuked again, they increased the ad buy. That's how dumb they think you are. They think everybody's so worried about losing jobs, and the facts will never catch up, and they got more money than we do with all these secret super PACs. So just put the ad on and blare it on. I want Barack Obama making those decisions, not somebody that will put on a knowingly bogus ad at the end of the campaign. Now, I think he's got better plans for the future. We need to continue to have the government and the private sector work together. That's what's working all over America. It's what's working all over the world. The most prosperous countries and the most prosperous communities in America are not those that operate according to the Tea Party philosophy. The most prosperous ones are where people from different parts of our society get together and work together to pass sensible budgets, to make sensible investments, to do things that make sense. And so the president says, look at the future. Where do you want America to be in 10 years? You want millions of more jobs. You want them to pay better than a lot of jobs do today. You want non-college educated people who lost their jobs in this downturn to be able to train and get those jobs and be part of our recovery and not be left behind, as they too often are today. And you want every American young person to be able to go to college and get a degree, because we're still near the top of the world in the percentage of our young people who go to college, but we have dropped to 15th or 16th in the percentage of our young adults who have finished. And you know why, don't you? The costs went up, the economy went down, people got scared they couldn't borrow the money and pay it back. So Obama says that means we have to invest in new infrastructure like more rapid broadband, so we have computer download speeds that allow people in rural areas in New Hampshire to be part of a global economy. It means we need to maximize the fact that we rank first or second in the world in the capacity to generate electricity from the sun and the wind. We got 175,000 people working in solar and wind. Actually, a little more. The Solar Institute said yesterday there was a 13% increase in solar employment last year. All these jobs pay above the national average. We need information technology jobs. We need a lot of other things, but we also have to empower and educate people to do them. There are 120,000 jobs open every year in America for computer scientists, but only 40,000 young people graduating with degrees in computer science. That's 80,000 good jobs a year going big. We can do that, but to do it, you got to invest in it. So the president wants to do that. And one of the things he did that I think is really important that you'll never see unless he's reelected is next year, under the new student loan law, every student in America that gets a federal student loan will have the option to pay it back in a radically different way. They can pay it back as a low fixed percent of their income for up to 20 years, which means nobody ever has to drop out of college again. It means when you get out of college, if you want to go be a teacher in rural New Hampshire in a place with a low tax base for 4 or 5 years because they need you, you can do it, because what you have to pay on your loan will be determined by your salary, not the other way around. Now, and he has a plan to do something about the debt, to bring it down $4 trillion over the next decade, with $2 of spending cuts for every $1 of new revenues, with the revenues to be raised only, keep in mind, he cut taxes on 98% of the people, President Obama did, by $3,600, gave 18 small business tax cuts. He says the people who got the lion's share of the tax cuts and the economic growth in the last decade, and keep in mind, before this meltdown, 90% of the growth went to the top 10% of us, and 44% of it went to the top 1% of us. He said, so it's not asking too much to ask them to kick in to help us deal with this debt. You can't look at tax like that, a tax like that, without looking at what kind of tax cuts the people got just recently. And everybody says the numbers add up, and it will take the debt down $4 trillion. Now that's better than Romney's plan. Romney's plan is, no, we should cut taxes another $5 trillion, 20% across the board, with 60% going to the most fortunate of us. He only identifies $1 trillion that he would make up. Keep in mind, they say the debt's a big problem. They want to dig the hole $5 trillion deeper. Then he identifies a little bit of money, $1 trillion of it, that you could make up from repealing corporate tax exemptions, and you lower the corporate tax rate. That's the Obama plan. That's my plan. That's anybody who's looked at this wants to do this. That's not rocket science. It'll make us more competitive. But the rest of it he doesn't say. And he wants to spend $2.5 trillion more over the next 10 years than President Obama doesn't. Cut education funding, cut training funding, cut investments in new infrastructure, cut investments in research and development, cut investments in clean energy. Get rid of all that stuff. He even wants to repeal the student loan law, which will add to the deficit raise the cost of student loans, and make them harder to repay, which will keep us dropping in the global rankings of college graduates. Obama's ideas are better. But I think this whole election is coming down to two things with people who are still undecided. They're worried about the debt, and Obama's president, and they think somehow we should have fully recovered from that crash, and Obama's president. Otherwise, Romney would be getting beat badly, I think. Don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. So let me talk a little about that. First of all, you can all go online and get a book. It's the best book ever written about financial crashes. It's called This Time It's Different by Kenneth Rogoff and Carmel Reinhardt.